Hello and welcome to Draft Thunder. I'm Andrew.
I'm Ben, just John Claude.
Yes, and welcome to week 3 of preseason. So we're going to break down the Thursday slate for you, and let's jump right into it. So who do you like at quarterback this week?
Yeah, so to start things off, there's a few quarterback situations we're still monitoring with the Giants and Redskins figuring out sort of how much they're going to play their rookies and versus Eli and Case Keenum, respectively. There, so a few situations to monitor. So we're not going to give plays on those two teams at quarterback, but could be tweeted plays or viable options. One of my favorite quarterbacks this week is going to be Mike Glennon. Played really well last week against the Cardinals. I think he threw for just about 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're going up to Canada this week, Winnipeg, to play the Packers as a home game. The Raiders have seemed to say that they kind of have seen all they need to see from who they I think is going to be the starter. Obviously, Derek Carr is the starter there. They're not going to play him that much. It doesn't seem like. Which just leaves Glennon and Peterman to split the rest of the game. I expect Glennon to do well here. After that Week 1 game, he came back really strong last week, and expect to see more of the same this week. So he's one of my top options.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hopefully it'll be somewhere around a 50-50 share. And did Peterman come in second last week, or did Glennon? Glennon did? Okay. Yeah, so he should get the rest of the half, I assume, which will hopefully be after a series too, which would be nice. I only have one quarterback this week because Ben's covering most of the load for quarterbacks. And for me, that is Ryan Finley. So he is the backup quarterback for the Bengals. And there's a few guys on that roster right now. There's obviously Andy Dalton, and I expect him to go somewhat into the second quarter. But then I expect Finley to get a lot of the play and maybe Driscoll to finish out the fourth quarter. And Ryan Finley put up really good numbers last week. I don't know exactly what they were, but they were a lot of yards, and I think he got at least a touchdown, maybe two. So he's just been looking really good, and I think he's a good option.
Yeah, he's been playing really well both weeks, to be honest, rookie. So hopefully that'll continue this week. So I'll just run through my next couple here. We'll get through quarterback pretty quickly. So another guy I'm going to be looking at is Gardner Minshew. I know we kind of trashed him last week, but then he went out and kind of shoved it in our faces and threw for 200 yards. I know that Foles is going to play, and the rest of that starting offense is going to play this week, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be very much. Foles is going to kind of go in and get some chemistry, maybe 3 or 4 series. The rest of the game really should be Gardner Minshew, so that kind of gets me excited. I mean, I know week 3 is supposed to be the dress rehearsal, so I think a lot of people are just going to be looking at the starters that they assume are going to play for most of the first half, if not more, which makes Gardner Minshew already getting more volume than those guys, and then going to go against those second and third string defenses. Makes him really valuable here. Hopefully he goes out and does the same thing he did last week as opposed to week 1. I think he will. He looked just so much better last week. Hopefully he can throw the ball in the end zone this week and go from there. Another play I'm going to be touching on is Tom Brady, actually. So this is more historical. We don't know yet. The Patriots are very secretive. They always have been. Belichick doesn't like to talk about what he's going to do. But over the past 2 years, Brady has thrown double-digit passes in the third preseason game. I think 18 last year and then 16 the year before that. That's plenty for me. I think 2 years ago he threw for about 180 and 2 touchdowns in the third preseason game. Last year wasn't quite as good, but I'll take the volume any day of the week with Tom Brady. I assume that since Belichick is that kind of guy, he's going to stick to his tradition and stick to what he normally does. I mean, it's tried and true. They've won tons of Super Bowls and had so much success with him. So I assume that Brady will go in and throw those 15 to 18 passes and then shut it down for the rest of the preseason. If we hear otherwise, obviously we'll let you know. But going off of historical data, I think that Tom Brady will see a decent amount of volume. And then the last one's going to be Josh Rosen. We've talked about him a lot here, but Fitzpatrick's going to start this game. I know Rosen was a surprise starter last week, but they're still trying to figure out quarterback situation. They keep saying that just because Fitzpatrick's starting this week doesn't mean he's the starter for week 1 of the regular season. So I assume that they're either going to split half and half or Rosen's going to get a little bit more of the lion's share. And with Fitzpatrick starting, that just means Rosen's going to go up against the worst defense with the second and third units. So I know he won't have as many good receivers in there, but I'm okay with that. I think he'll still have Preston Williams, who I'm going to touch on later anyway. So I think Rosen's another good option here this week again.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And one thing to say about this year that we're noticing is it's not really like many other years. And even if you're watching ESPN, they'll say it on their coverage. A lot less teams are playing their starters a lot less. They're more taking these joint practices and using those kind of as the warm ups for the quarterback going into the season. So, and just the stars in general. So really, we're not getting the same kind of volume out of them as we normally would. Normally, this would be like 3 starting quarterbacks that we'd be playing instead of these backups, and we only named 1 or 2 that are starters. So it's definitely weird. If we get news that a starter is going into the second half or playing the whole first half, they'll probably jump up on our board. So stay tuned with us on that on Twitter and stuff at Draft Throwing DFS. But anyway, we can move on to running backs.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick. I mean, Daniel Jones is someone that I want to play. I don't know if they want that quarterback controversy, honestly.
Yeah.
And how much they're going to play Eli versus him and things of that nature. So, something to keep an eye on. But obviously, he's played amazing so far this preseason, so he'd be a good play if he was going to see the volume. And
just one other thing too. With these players, like the players that are stars on these teams, I don't know exactly one in mind. Like, let's say for Green Bay, if we found out Devontae Adams is playing the whole first half, that's something that you would not be able to get in the regular season for the same price as literally everybody else, and it brings him out on top. So if there's a team that we see that we can target a star who's going to play a lot, that's what we're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. So we'll let you know later in the week, but for now, these are our best plays for what we believe the volume is going to be.
Yeah.
So moving on to running backs, I'm going to start off with Jordan Ellis, who's a guy that we've been using pretty constantly now, consistently, and he is the running back for the Bengals. So the starters will play a series less than last year, apparently, and Mixon last year ran for about 5 carries.
Yeah, the coach was being a little bit weird with the way he was trying to talk about playing time. Just essentially, they're not going to play the whole first half.
Yeah. And Jordan Ellis last week saw 15 carries. I have right here. He got like 52 yards on those 15 carries, and he had 5 catches in the backfield on 6 targets. So the volume has definitely been there for him. Even if he gets half of that, those are still pretty good numbers. And I expect him not to get half. I expect him to get much more than half still. So I expect him to be highly used late in the second quarter and throughout the second half, which I think will lead him getting good numbers. They like using their receivers out of the backfield, like Giovanni Bernard. Yeah, he's been really good in the past years. So he's just a guy who I'm going to have in a lot of my lineups, I think. You got get one.
Yeah. So a similar style running back here. I'm going to go with Justice Hill with Baltimore. So a guy that wants to catch the ball in the backfield extremely fast. He had 9 missed tackles in just, I believe, 8 touches or something to that effect last week. He forced 9 missed tackles, which is a crazy high number. Mark Ingram hasn't had that in a whole season ever, I know it's a totally different style, but that just shows you how big of a number 9 missed tackles really is. So crazy fast, really good moves in space. They like to use him out of the backfield. He's going to get more run here. I mean, you're going to see Mark Ingram, you're going to see Gus Edwards. Most likely going to see Kenneth Dixon, but he is kind of banged up. We're keeping an eye on it, but I think he'll play this week anyway. So he's sort of that 4th guy, still needing to make the roster. His spot's getting more and more solidified as we go. But, I mean, the Ravens here, they kind of came out and said, like we talked about with the joint practices, the Ravens said, Lamar is probably going to see the same amount of volume he saw last week, so I expect the same for Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards type. And then I think Justice Hill is going to just run wild here. They're going to use him a lot. They're going to let him show out, and I think he'll keep forcing those missed tackles and hopefully break one into the end zone.
Yep. I like Justice Hill to play too, and he's another guy that I considered in mine. I'm going to go over my last 2 running back plays, and that is the first one is Thomas Rawls for the Jags. So, do we think Fournette's going to play this week?
He's going to play, but like I said with Foles, it's going to be like the first quarter.
Yeah, so we won't see too much out of him. And then after he came out, we saw a lot of Rawls. He got 7 carries, and he only got 19 yards. But 7 carries is pretty good volume for a preseason game for a running back. And really, he's pretty good out of the back, or for a receiving back, too. He had 3 catches for 19 yards in that game. So he got this workload pretty early, and all I see is him getting pushed back into the second quarter and going into the third quarter in this game. So I think that he will have a lot of good looks here, and he is going against Miami's defense, who hasn't been very good against the run. So that's one guy that I'm targeting, and the other one is going to be kind of up in the air. I targeted against Green Bay because they've been the worst against the rush this season so far in the 2 preseason games. They have let up 154 yards per game for rushing yards per game. So that's not good, obviously. And
breaking news, that's not good.
Yeah, no. And Oakland has had the most rushing yards per game, or like top 3 or something. I think it might be most. I'm not sure. It's a great matchup for them and the volume they've been doing in the running game. They said that they want to run the ball more this year. So basically, I'm going to target the guys who've been successful. That, to me, is going to be between 2 guys. It's going to be either Mac Brown or James Butler. And they both got 8 rushes last week, 32 yards for James Butler, 27 for Mac Brown, and a touchdown for Mac Brown. Neither had a target, so I'm kind of torn. I think James Butler is the better running back, so I would actually lean him, but really could go with either one. I think one of them is going to be successful. So if you're making a lot of lineups, mix them in and out, those are 2 guys that I would see being good. And like he said about them knowing who they have and stuff, I would have went DeAndre Washington, but I also think that they know what they have in him. Mm-hmm. And the same thing was like Josh Jacobs being the young guy. So
yeah, they're not going to get Josh Jacobs hurt.
Yes, so one of them, one of the 2.
Yeah, we kind of saw it in Hawaii last week. Some of those, like in that Rams game, some of those guys don't show up when they have to travel far into weird places and weird stadiums. So that might be another low scoring game, but yeah, some of the young guys definitely have to prove themselves still. So yeah, I have 2 more running backs. I'm gonna go with Jordan Scarlett again. So he's had the most carries. I know Bonifin had a decent amount of catches, I think 3 or 4, but he only had 3 carries. So that doesn't jump off the page to me. It's not enough volume for me to trust him. Jordan Scarlett had 8 carries. I think he averaged just over 4 yards a carry. That's really good. I mean, that would win him a job if it was regular season and things like that. So I really like him again. We haven't talked about the Panthers yet, but they kind of went and said probably 3 or 4 series for their starters. So, expect to see Cam and Christian out there for the first quarter, maybe a little bit more than that. After that, though, it's not much. We've talked about the Panthers' backfield a few times throughout the first couple weeks here, and they don't have a ton of guys back there. Cameron Artis-Payne will play a little bit, I suspect, but Jordan Scarlett's trying to make the team and trying to become the second running back over Artis-Payne. So I expect him to get 8 to 10 carries again. Hopefully he can maybe get in the passing game a little bit, maybe get in the end zone, do a little bit more. But just that volume kind of jumped out to me, and I think it'll continue here. And then, look, the last one, I'm going against what I did last week. I know it didn't work out in our favor. And Brian Hill, RIP. I mean, he had the same amount of carries as Ito, but Ito was a lot more in the passing game. 3 catches for 45 yards. He also got in the end zone. So obviously that swayed that running back decision way in Ito Smith's favor. So I'm going to go with Ito Smith this week. I expect a very similar split again with Brian Hill and Ito Smith. So I think Brian Hill can still be viable, but as Ito kind of showed last week, he's much more involved in the passing game. It looks to be a clear-cut number 2 running back behind Devontae. I don't think Devontae's going to play that much again. Like we said, he's always injured, so they have to keep him on the field. There's no way he's going to try to do too much in a preseason game. So I expect Ito to see a good amount of work here. Hopefully that means 8 carries, maybe a few catches, maybe get in the end zone again. Brian Hill has been sort of celebrated by Dan Quinn. He's been their best between the tackles runner. So again, I think he can be viable. I just think that Ito might be a little bit more of a safe play given his passing upside.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I think that those are all the running backs that both of us have. Let's move on to receiver, and I'm going to start off with the X Factor, Benny Fowler. So he's on the Giants now, and both of the weeks in the preseason he has caught a touchdown. Last week I went TJ Jones, but this week I think that the starters will obviously get a little bit more of a run, and I think that Benny Fowler has been getting the red zone looks a lot. I don't expect to see. Did Evan Ingram even play last week? I don't expect to see a lot of Evan Ingram. Yeah, he didn't suit up last week. So I think the goal line targets can be there for Benny Fowler, at least, or not goal line, red zone. But really, he's just this guy that they like, that Eli likes, and Daniel Jones likes, apparently, that he's been showing out in camp. So I really like him as a play, and then I'm also going to say something that our insider has given us information on, and that is Kenny Stills. So apparently at practice, Kenny Stills was talking smack about Jay-Z because Jay-Z had some controversy about kneeling.
Well, he signed that deal with the NFL, and some players didn't like that because they thought that went against the Kaepernick thing and the politics that went into that. So
yeah. So then the Dolphins went on to play 8 straight Jay-Z songs. And we expect that he is fired up. And I think that he should see some decent time this week. So I think that that was totally unrelated, but I still think he's a good play who's going to be successful. Really in that offense with Parker hurt, Wilson hurt, like he's just got to step up and be the guy. And I think with his speed against like the Jacksonville secondary, he sees a good amount of time in the slot, I think. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, so he should not be being shadowed by Jalen Ramsey too much. And I think that he's just a good play this week.
Yeah, welcome to Narrative Street.
Yeah. Basically.
Play as you will.
Yeah, he'd be the back end play on my 3.
The guy that is actually stepping up to be the guy is Preston Williams.
Yeah.
So we talked about him last week, and
great one catch.
I think it was 2.
Yeah.
But the thing I liked is he still had 6 targets. So it didn't necessarily mean he caught. I mean, that's only 33% if it was 2 catches. But I still love the targets. I still love the volume. He's still being touted as like potentially their number 1 receiver, which is insane. Coming out of camp.
One catch.
So 1 out of 6. So yeah, not a great conversion rate, but I still love the volume. It shows that both quarterbacks are looking his way. And he's just been showing out all camp, and then the first week of preseason, obviously he welcomed himself to the league. So I expect him to go back to that, catch more than 1 pass this week.
Yeah.
He should get a similar amount of targets. He'll probably see a ton of volume again in this game. So yeah, I think going with him is a pretty solid choice. Another guy I'm going to talk about is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So another guy that didn't convert a lot of his targets last week, but he had 7, which is really big. And we already talked about the Eagles, how they're not going to play Wentz most likely. Their starters are going to get some time, but they used that joint practice this week to really see what they needed to see. So I'm going with Arcega-Whiteside because he will mix in that first team, but he's also really on that second team, so he's going to stay through and see a lot of those targets again. I mean, Cody Kessler, that was very unfortunate last week after 7 plays, I think it was, that he had a concussion. But I think he saw 1 or 2 targets from him and then a ton from Thorson. So it shows me that he played that whole first half last week. I don't expect that to be anything different. Might get a little bit more time this week. 7 targets is a lot, especially on a preseason slate. So and he's just massive in the red zone as well. So
yeah, I like him. And going back to Kenny Stills, he got 2 catches on 3 targets. So I think that both of them. I think Preston Williams is a better play there, but Kenny Stills has potential, breaking a long one, and I think he'll get the volume. But moving on to my 3rd guy is going to be Jacoby Myers, who I'm going back to for New England. He has been going off in the preseason. He's been receiving a ridiculous amount of targets for them. 6 catches on 6 targets. He's got really good hands. They're a guy he likes. He plays early downs, early in the game. So if we see Tom Brady going a pretty decent amount here, I think that he'll be getting a lot of looks from him. I expect if Tom Brady's playing, Edelman's going to play, so he will take away some. But I expect Jacoby Myers to go deeper into the game. And really, he's one of the top string guys on their offense. And a guy to look into in season play, too. I think that he will be successful this season as their 3rd guy.
it'll be interesting now.
It definitely will.
You're going to have to deal with Josh Gordon and
But he's going to have to deal with himself.
potentially Demaryius Thomas. Well,
And N'Keal Harry.
and N'Keal Harry. So definitely a guy fighting for a roster position now that Demaryius is back to practice and Gordon is off suspension. So
Yeah, and there's even Philip Dorsett. So they still want to see what they have from him. So he should get a good run here, and he'll be high owned. That would be one thing. I can almost guarantee that. Probably 30 to 40% at least.
If the Yankees could stop striking out, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Well,
Anyway, I also had him written down. So I'm gonna have one more play, and this is more a GPP. I like Tyler Boyd this week. Just thinking that he doesn't need a ton of volume to do what he needs to do. I think he'll get some passes from Dalton. Dalton likes to look his way. It seems like Boyd is kind of trending in an upwards direction if you're looking at season-long drafts and things of that nature. It looks like he has a lot of good press coming out of camp as that number 2, and then probably the number 1 for the first 3 or 4 weeks without A.J. Green. So I think Dalton and him are going to build off that chemistry they've had, and I think he'll get 3 or 4 looks his way, and he definitely doesn't need a ton of room to make that work. He can take one deep. So I like him as a sort of a GPP play, but a kind of a nice little play against hopefully some not as good defenses.
hopefully not. So we are going to move on to our favorite position, which is tight ends.
Drew Sample scored.
He did. You're welcome. I didn't play him. Anyway,
I did.
I didn't do too many lives last week, not as many as I wanted to. But I'm going to give 2 guys who I think will at least get a few catches and hopefully fall in the end zone. But the first guy is going to be Mike Gesicki. That is literally the 3rd Dolphin, technically, receiver that we've mentioned, which is ugly. So one of them should do something, right?
Right?
He caught 2-3 targets last week, and he's going to extend look here. That's basically all it is. They want him to be in that starting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't shown too much. The 2 out of 3 targets was on a drive where you could clearly tell they were trying to get him involved, and it did work a little bit, but he only got a few yards on it. So they're definitely going to want to see him more this week. Hopefully get those targets in the red zone and really see him step up there. So he's the first guy, and the second guy I have is Will Tye. So we just found out that Dallas Goedert is injured and out for the remainder of the preseason. So Will Tye got 3 receptions for 34 yards last week. I expect him to step up and be the number 2 guy because there are a lot of injuries in that tight end group for Philly. Yeah, Richard Rodgers is hurt. Perkins is hurt. So he's the next guy up. I expect him to see a lot of play here with the second-string guys and even third-string guys probably. Because ever since he left the Giants, even with the Giants, he was really not seen to be the guy. So he's got to step up in this game.
Yeah, I would agree. Probably a guy that's just going to – he's not going to break anything most likely. He's just going to catch some passes for 10 or 12 yards, move the chains. I like Gesicki, though. I think he'll be a good red zone target. I only have one tight end play, and we're going back to Robert Tonyan here. So we just talked about sort of the motivational things and the different players that might not play in that game in Canada. I think I found out it was like a 13-hour something for Green Bay to travel, a 13-hour travel. I don't know. I heard something like that. Also, Jimmy Graham is hurt. Probably won't suit up for this game. So it makes Tonyan pretty interesting. He's had a pretty solid preseason to this date. So I expect that to just kind of continue. If Rodgers plays, that'll help. Obviously, last week, Rodgers was going to play up until he didn't and had back stiffness before the game and decided to not come out. But Tonyan still had a few catches, so it looks like he has some chemistry with their other quarterbacks, and hopefully he can continue that this week.
5 targets, 3 catches, that's pretty good. He only got 17 yards, but you can only expect that to be increased, you know?
I agree.
So I think that's about all we have for position players. I had a different defense, I swear. Oh, it's down there. And so who's your top defense this week?
Yeah, it's Baltimore. We talked about Philly probably not playing Wentz, and then
Bias.
Well, they've been good so far.
They've been the best.
Yeah, and we talked about them not playing Wentz, and they're bringing in McCown, who was just retired, and Kessler was obviously concussed, and Thorson played pretty well. But the reason we didn't talk about Kessler, I think, this week is we just don't know what they're going to do with McCown. I mean, who knows what kind of shape he's in? Who knows how much they want to see from him? So if we find more out about that quarterback room as well, but Thorson looks like they might need to see him for an extended look as well. So we didn't talk about their quarterbacks, but that's kind of the reason why. But yeah, with no Wentz and the Ravens starting defense probably playing at least the first quarter, I could expect some mistakes from Kessler or McCown, whoever's going to start.
One of them eventually will make a mistake, I think.
I think so too. So they're my top.
Yes, I would also. I'm probably going to go them too. And it's really not because we're Ravens fans. Like, it helps, obviously. But we would probably be playing them a lot anyway. They just to add in there, they have been the second best for rushing yards per game, like lowest rushing yards per game, and the best in lowest passing yards per game, only laying up 107. So, like, per game. So that's insanely good.
Yeah, and in these joint practices, we've kind of read that the defense had very strong practices against the Eagles.
Under.
Could be an under game.
Probably. So, the only defense that I have is, besides them, like I said, it's going to be mostly them because I think they'll do well this week. But the Patriots defense is another good one to look at here. They're also towards the bottom in passing yards per game. I think they are second best. Yes, they are second best in passing yards per game, and they are going against the Panthers, whose quarterback room is not so great. We targeted that against them last week, and it turned out pretty well. Targeting against Will Greer. I think Kyle Allen was the one who did better last week. I can't really remember. But we used the Bills last week, and they scored some pretty good points. I think they were one of the best on the slate. And then Cam Newton is possibly going to be playing in this game. He didn't play last game, but I still expect him to make early mistakes and struggle against the Patriots. They probably have a pretty good read on him because Belichick likes to do his homework. So I think that's a great matchup for the Patriots, and the way they've been playing, they should dominate, really.
Yeah, Cam's going to see the first quarter, but after that, it's going to be a mess. So
yeah.
It might not look great early, but I think as time goes on. That's the other thing is with some of these plays, I mean, you're probably used to it now with the preseason, but some of these guys might not come in until the second half or maybe late in the second quarter. So just give it some time, give it some patience. We'll wait for the slate to be over to sort of see where we're at, since there's not a ton of starters that we've given out.
Yeah. So a few things to talk about before we wrap this up, or as we're wrapping it up. Obviously, again, follow us on Twitter because we will be keeping you updated as much as we can through who we're going to play. I have also been kind of keeping the comments updated, so if we see new players that should be put in and players who you shouldn't play anymore, like there's a lot of interchangeable things that I will be pinning the post like to the YouTube page and keeping that updated. So like last week I did a player pool because last week's slate turned to a mess at one point. One of the days did. And the player pool ended up being really good, but I feel like not too many people saw it. So that's just something to please keep an eye out for. We got some good feedback. Like it was some good criticism, honestly, that helped us too. So just really, again, talk to us. We appreciate the help as much as we can get.
Obviously, we don't know what kind of contests or slates are going to pop up for the rest of the weekend. Just a note for Saturday's games, the Jets have kind of come out and said the starters are going to play a half plus a series. So just in case we aren't able to get content out or whatever the case may be, and you're watching this video and you want to play Saturday, something to keep in mind.
Yep. So I think that's about all we have. So thank you for watching and good luck this week.
Yeah. See ya.